roles are a little blurred at the moment, but to be quite clear, I.M.E is much bigger than WikiLeaks. It is not simply a WikiLeaks project. This is the people of Iceland saying, you know, a little transparency could have helped us during that banking crisis. Thanks for leaking those documents. Let's make sure that we codify that we make sure that people understand as a cultural value that we want to see that we want to see that all the time when people do those types of things, because those people bankrupted our entire nation. So I.M.E is an attempt at that. And imagine, if you will, for a moment, the Bill of Rights. It's pretty fantastic. Well, it turns out that it's not quite good enough. And I say that as a pretty reasonable and loyal American, which is to say, Sweden has better press protection laws. Iceland will soon have better press protection laws. Belgium has better press protection laws. Lots of other places in the world have better human rights records. So we wanted to take things from all over the world, including actually New York State, which has anti-libel tourism laws, specifically generated in response to some of the things happening in the United Kingdom. And so this is really important, because what I.M.E is doing is it's building a super information state, right? And it sets an example for the rest of the world to follow. And even the Prime Minister of Iceland voted for this, because you see, it passed unanimously in Iceland. 50 people in their parliament, including the Prime Minister. And I want to make this, thank you. I want to make this totally clear. This is not just WikiLeaks. This is a lot of people. And this is extremely important, I believe, because Iceland is acting in solidarity with the idea that you have the right to know what's going on, that history shall not be erased, that when things take place, that we will note them and that we will show them. And that when a big corporation who has a lot of money, or when a government that has a lot of guns says that you're going to pretend that it didn't, well, we're not going to stand and take that, and Iceland has decided that they also are not going to. It's not finished, in that they're going to go through several more rounds and re-vote on it again. But the mere fact that it passed unanimously should give you an idea about how well this is going to go. And the European Union actually passed a resolution in support of I.M.E. And this is incredible, because essentially that means that Iceland is leading the way and is doing so in such a way that the European superstate is taking notice and following. So it's kind of up to America now to follow. We need to pass resolutions here, locally, that make this a possibility, and nationally, that strengthen the things that our Constitution says very clearly and redefine them so that they count in the digital age in a way that is absolutely without question. Because a lot of people like to pretend that there's a moral panic around the internet. So if you'd like, when you see information on WikiLeaks, print it out and hand it to someone, and then it's a newspaper. It's not different, except that it can't be stopped. You can't force collaboration. I like the New York Times a lot. But did you know that they sat on the information that Bush was doing warrantless wiretapping for a year until the election passed? What? It's unbelievable, right? That is the type of collaboration that I don't want to see anymore. So you've got to be the trouble you want to see in the world, and you've got to be the change you want to see in the world. So thanks to Iceland and the people of Iceland, we're going to see that in the future, and we're going to see a lot of things change. So I want to skip around a little bit here. There's a lot of technical criticism and a lot of misdirection and a lot of misinformation. So I'm going to go through these things reasonably fast, and I know that some of you are getting a little antsy because your club mate is kicking in. So I'm going to answer a bunch of the questions, and I'm going to address many of the criticisms that people have made. So first of all, there has been someone who has said that WikiLeaks was started by sniffing networks. And I'm going to say that that's not true right now, to make that a record, to make it very clear. WikiLeaks is an idea that has been going long, long before the Tor network even existed. So to say that is, of course, to show that not only does that person not have a fucking clue, but they're actually provably wrong. Furthermore, they accused me as a Tor developer of having done this. And well, I really appreciate the idea that they think that I would be such a terrible person. And by appreciate it, I mean I don't appreciate that, actually. Tor is privacy by design. That means me being a Tor developer is totally irrelevant to the situation. I write some software, it gets put into our Git repository. In no way does that information help. The nodes that are exiting from the Tor network are not controlled by me. If I run an exit node, that has nothing to do with whether or not I'm a Tor developer. But I can state that I do not and have not sniffed the Tor network, and certainly not for documents. And WikiLeaks was absolutely not started by sniffing the Tor network. So hopefully that's clear. And hopefully no more shady rag publications on the web will state that. Because it's quite clear that some of them like to email 4 hours before they publish a story and expect a comment on Pacific Standard Time, which is not exactly an ethical thing to do. It's probably going to be public quite quickly. And specifically, the documents that they said were leaked. So that's really important, right? Those went through our normal So that's really important, right? Those went through our normal submission process. Anyway, Cryptome. Some of you know about this, about John Young. I think that John Young is probably a pretty good guy. I've never met him. I'd love to meet him someday. Oh, fantastic. Well, today's not the day for him. But it's really important to note he is doing something very good, but it is not the same as what WikiLeaks is doing. In fact, when he publishes information that is provably and clearly false, that's not really so good at information vetting. And I think that that's kind of a shame when that happens. So I'd just like to say that, with all due respect, he's incorrect. There's a pretty funny thing that's been on there recently, and I just like to address it as pure comedy gold. The WikiLeaks insider. Whoever you are, I imagine that you're either in the audience or watching it on the stream or watching this video later, it is incredibly amusing, fantastically wrong. The things that you're saying are incorrect. And just to show the rest of you guys, here's some tips for the insider. Just like so you can correct your insider writing, so we can have a continued morale boost. We would like them to be a little funnier, if you could maybe step up the humor a bit, but get a couple basic facts right. Julian, as someone who has spent many a night sleeping in a hotel room about 5 feet from Julian, I can tell you he does not live a life of luxury. Whoa, man, that guy in his socks. But there's an insider tip for you, right? He does not live a life of luxury in South Africa. In fact, as far as I know, and as far as Julian has told me, he's never actually been to South Africa. Now, I know Africa is a large continent, and it's not a country. So in case this is not clear, I don't know if the insider is Sarah Palin or not, but I do think that it's quite clear, to me at least, that that fact is wrong, very, very clearly. Kenya is actually in Africa also, but it is, again, not South Africa. South Africa is a country. Okay, so the Wohlholland, wow, my German is gone. Scheiße. Okay, so the nonprofit in Germany that does help us quite a bit, that does a lot of funding and takes donations, they keep records. They show quite clearly that Julian does not buy business class plane tickets. And well, I travel about 150,000 miles a year, and some of that is in coach, and it is not necessarily the most comfortable. That's sort of the cost that we take, you know? Like it takes a toll, but we do it. And all of us involved at WikiLeaks very clearly cares enough to be stuck in cattle class to make this happen, right? And we do that. I think that's totally reasonable, and we have records that show it. So when you say otherwise, you have to back that up with some serious, serious proof. And it's pretty, I think, despicable to see otherwise. And no one at WikiLeaks takes a salary. This is really important, right? I work a full-time job with Tor, and that's what I've dedicated my life to. And Julian and other people have worked for their whole lives to be in a position to be able to tell the truth and to take a stand for other people and to